Hey guys, how's it going? On today's video, I want to show you the differences between a early model and a late model E30 gas tank. I then am also going to cut them open. These both are eBay gas tanks and they both arrived damaged, so they're no use to me. And there's actually no pictures or someone cutting them open to see how they work on the inside. Also, disclaimer, if your gas tank has had gas in it, don't do this. Gas is very flammable. While you're cutting it open, there are sparks that could ignite fumes or any liquid left in the tank, so please don't do it. In front here, we have a late model gas tank, which is 16.6-ish gallons. And then in the back, we have an early model gas tank, which is 14.5-ish, I believe. Obviously, two different sizes, but also the late model gas tank, you have your fuel pump and your sender unit, and you have a second sender unit for your fuel level since they don't share. You have your inlet for your fuel neck, and then you have a nipple right here for your return. So unlike the early model gas tank where you have your fuel pump and you have your one sender unit, you don't have a second, and the inlet and outlet of the fuel, so your fuel out and fuel return, are both in the fuel pump, whereas the late model tank is only out. You only have your out in the fuel pump, and then you have your in the fuel tank itself. So those are the main differences between the two tanks. I'm actually going to go ahead and cut them open so you can see on the inside. I prefer the late model tank because of the bigger capacity, but since it's going to be going in my early model, I don't have two. I don't want and I don't have two sender units for the wiring. So what I want to do is make sure that both tanks stay level at the same time, just like the early model tank, which if you see here, the early model tank usually has a pipe that connects the two, which is why there's only one sender unit, is because these two tanks share levels. So as this one goes down, they go down at the same time because they share fuel. Whereas this tank, they don't share fuel. There's a passage that sucks it over, but they're not always at the same level. Whereas these are always at the same level. So that's what I want to somehow do kind of the same thing so that they're both level. So I only have to use one. So I'm going to go ahead, get these cut open, and we'll see what's inside. So now we have the early model one up front. So go ahead and remove the top here. So you could see that I guess the fuel has a little bit of room to move this way while the car is sloshing back and forth. But you can see it does have the drain on the passenger side, or the driver's side, excuse me. It has the drain so that it could transfer over through the hole right there into this side of the tank, the passenger side. And then obviously we have little provisions and some at the bottom so that it could flow in. Although this hole and that little opening right there are the only openings to, let's call it the surge tank, which is the cup that holds all your fuel for it to pick up. So that's the only provision it had. And besides the little bit of room right here for fuel to fill over. So let's go ahead and I'm going to bring you guys up here. I'm going to take this part off. And as you could see, there isn't any provisions for the fuel to pass to the other side, which is interesting. And now we have these splashing little tabs here so that when the car is going back and forth, it helps with fuel starvation. And as you can see, the return line goes all the way around and back into the cup so that fuel is directly going to that. So it is very interesting how the fuel is able to cross over in the late model tank. It's almost like the cup with the straw and letting gravity do its work. If you can get a fluid over the lip of something, maybe I'll do it and add it to the video. But if you can get if you put a cup, you put a straw all the way to the bottom. If you could get the liquid to come up and over the straw by itself, like if you suck it real quick and then it starts flowing, it'll bring the rest of the fluid out with it, which I'll just insert the clip here. All right, so we got water in a tube. So as long as you can get it over the crest and down into below, it'll keep flowing. So let's get it to flow. So as you could see, gravity is doing its work and water is flowing over the ridge and down into here. You see the water flowing out, letting gravity do its job. But that might be the same premise that once fuel starts moving over, that it just continues to go, unless there is any provisions in here, which there might be a gap somewhere in here to also suck fluid through as it's getting pushed. Now for this one, I'm going to use a pump real quick, and I'm hoping that when I put water through the return, that there's an actual opening here so it starts to fill this. So what that would mean is as the pressure is pushing the return fuel out this way, it's actually picking up liquid in here and moving it to the passenger side of the tank. So as you can see, there is liquid there. So there's, I don't know if this is just an issue with the eBay tanks or if all the tanks are like this, so that when there's fluid in here and it's getting pushed through, it's also getting pulled in and sucked in through this. I mean, it's a tiny little crevice, so I'm not sure if that's how it's meant to be, but it does work. So the only way I can really test that is if I fill this side of the tank completely and then just continue to push fluid through to see if it just carries fluid over. So I'm gonna go ahead, dump the water out of this, get this one side filled up, and we'll continue. All right, so I had to go outside, and I'm gonna have to do a voiceover because my neighbors are playing music in the background. So I got the one side filled up, and so what I'm hoping to see is that when I'm just gonna pump some air through it, that as I pump air through the pickup tube or the return line, that it's sucking water into the return tube and into the cup, which you can see it is. And then I'm going to put water through the return line, and what I'm hoping to see is that I can initiate that siphon where you get it over the crest and then it'll continue to flow. So a few pumps in and I don't have to continue pumping any of the water. It's not sucking from the water in the bucket. It's actually refilling itself from the other side of the tank. So that is exactly what I'm looking for. But other than that, there's not really any other way that fluid would be transferring between the two. So there you go. That's the inside of an early and a late model tank. So what I think I'm going to do is, with that late model tank right there, is I'm going to do the same thing, but I do think I'm going to attach a hose from here to here so that the fluid can level out between the two tanks, so that I know that the one level sender will be enough for the level of both tanks. Obviously, the early model tank, they're at two different levels, so it makes sense that everything is coming down to fill the main tank. Whereas this one, obviously, they're not. So I have to figure out a way for fluid to want to, or gas to want to flow down and in to this tank to make sure that they stay even. So if you guys have any questions, put them down below. If you guys have any ideas on how to improve the gas tanks, let me know on that one too. I'm also considering like one of the drop-in radium cells that I can cut the top, drop it in, and let it do its work. But I do like the idea of being able to go back to a factory pump if needed. With a radium setup, you'd end up cutting it, so you wouldn't be able to do that. Obviously, it would be nice to put foam in here so that there's not as much slosh. Although it's not a track car, it's good preventative, so maybe, although those holes are tiny, I'm able to just fit some through it to make it work. But I just want to, my idea is to get the tanks so that they stay at a level, their fill level is the same, but I only have to use one fuel level sender instead of the two, because one, wiring in the second one, most early model chassis don't have the provision for the second unit. This is an 87, so it does have the provision, it's just not cut out. But it doesn't have, obviously I don't have the wiring since the chassis harness is an 87, and I'm sticking with that. I want to be able to just utilize the single level sender and just make sure everything is working the way it should. If you guys have any ideas, put it down in the comments. Stay tuned for part 2, and I'm going to go ahead and add that crossover pipe, so hopefully that we could see it fill from the same level, and then once we drain it again, that everything drains like it should. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a great day.